Good morning to all. So today we are going to discuss about viral infections of the nervous system. So a number of viruses can affect the human nervous system, but in 60 to 90% of cases, only a specific viral cause is found. Remaining cases, that of the cause of the viral meningitis may be unknown. So there is some difference between viral meningitis and encephalitis. And in viral meningitis, the infectious process is mainly limited to the meninges. But sometimes brain parenchyma may also be involved in my minority of viral meningitis cases. In case of viral encephalitis, predominantly the brain parenchyma is involved, but occasionally meninges may be involved in viral encephalitis. Suppose if the both meninges and brain parenchyma are involved, that is called meningoencephalitis. So coming to the etiology of viral meningitis, so some viruses may affect the neurons and some viruses may affect the non-neurons. Suppose in case of viruses affecting the neurons, poliovirus mainly affects the motor neurons and varicella zoster virus mainly affects the sensory neurons, and the rabies virus especially affects the brainstem neurons. Some viruses may affect the non-neuronal structures. Among these important viruses, herpes simplex virus. This herpes simplex virus affect all the elements of the central nervous system, especially medial parts of the temporal lobes are affected by the herpes simplex virus. And other than that, glial cells, myelinated fibers, and blood vessels are also affected in herpes simplex virus encephalitis or meningitis. And one more important cause for viral meningitis is HIV, which may induce multiple foci of tissue necrosis throughout the cerebral hemisphere. So certain viruses affect the neurons and certain viruses may affect the non-neuronal structures. So coming to transmission of the viral meningitis, the most common cause of transmission of viral infection is through the hematogenous spread. And some viruses like the measles, mumps, and varicella zoster virus may enter into the body through the respiratory passages. And some viruses like enteroviruses, poliovirus may enter into the body through the orointestinal route. And herpes simplex virus, especially, it enters into the body through the oral route or genital mucosal route. Some viruses may enter into the body through the inoculation of certain animal bites like rabid dogs or bats. And sometimes some viral infections like rubella, CMV virus, and HIV virus, they may also enter into the body through the placenta. So what happens after enter into the body? So once the virus enter into the body, it multiplies locally and in some secondary sites, results in the formation of viremia. So when the viremia is massive and the conditions are favorable, these viruses may invade the central nervous system through the cerebral capillaries and the choroid plexus. So there is another pathway of infection is viruses enters through the peripheral nerves, that is most commonly seen in rabies virus. So this rabies virus usually enters into the central nervous system through the retrograde or centripetal movement or retrograde exoplasmic transport. How the viruses affect the central nervous system? It can affect the central nervous system by directly by infecting the meninges, sometimes brain parenchyma, and spinal cord. And viral infections may also affect the CNS by indirectly through the immunological reaction. Coming to definition of viral meningitis and viral encephalitis, in case of viral meningitis, inflammation is largely restricted to the meninges. So inflammation of the meninges is called viral meningitis. In viral meningitis, most of the times the symptoms or signs suggestive of brain parenchyma like altered consciousness, such as a stupor, coma, or marked confusion and seizures do not occur in viral meningitis. So inflammation is mainly restricted to the meninges. So the patients with viral meningitis most often presents with fever, headache, and meningeal predominant meningeal signs. In case of viral encephalitis, it is mainly due to inflammation of the brain parenchyma. So because of involvement of brain parenchyma, they have alteration of consciousness that may be stupor or severe coma, along with convulsions or focal neurological signs may be present in viral encephalitis. Suppose if encephalitis, meningitis and encephalitis both are present, symptoms like meningeal irritation along with altered behavior, then we should suspect meningoencephalitis. So it is not always easy to separate the viral meningitis from viral encephalitis because both may be vice versa. So in case of viral meningitis, brain features suggest a brain parenchyma may also be present. In case of viral encephalitis, there may be predominant meningeal signs. Coming to acute viral meningitis or aseptic meningitis. So why it is called as aseptic meningitis means, so if you send the blood cultures in a patient suspecting of acute viral meningitis, usually we will get negative blood cultures. And that's why it is known as aseptic meningitis. And coming to pathological changes of acute viral meningitis, they are not specific and usually limited to the meninges only. And coming to prognosis, usually it is rarely fatal condition. Acute viral meningitis is rarely fatal. If you see the acute bacterial meningitis or purulent meningitis, that is very fatal condition. If you do not start empirical antibiotic therapy, they will lead to death also. But in case of acute viral meningitis, usually it is a rarely fatal. Most of the conditions will recover completely. Some cases may have some residual neurological manifestations. So coming to epidemiology, the incidence of viral meningitis is around 60,000 to 75,000 cases per year. In case of viral encephalitis, it is approximately 20,000 cases are reported annually in the United States. So coming to etiology of meningitis, acute viral meningitis, coming to acute viral meningitis, the most common causes are enteroviruses like Coxsackie virus, echovirus, and the human enteroviruses. And second most common cause after enteroviruses, herpes simplex virus 2, and other causes like arthropod-borne viruses, HIV are the most common causes of acute viral meningitis. Less common causes for acute viral meningitis are varicella zoster virus and Epstein-Barr virus. Coming to causes of acute encephalitis are most common causes are herpes simplex virus 1, varicella zoster virus, and Epstein-Barr virus and arboviruses. Rarely it can be caused by rabies virus, enteroviruses, and mumps virus. So coming to etiology, most common causes for acute viral meningitis is enterovirus, herpes simplex virus. Coming to acute viral encephalitis, it is caused by herpes simplex virus 1, varicella zoster, and Epstein-Barr virus. So enteroviruses are the most common cause of acute viral meningitis. So it accounts for more than 85% of cases, and it is most commonly seen in children less than 15 years of age. And usually the incidence of acute viral meningitis due to enteroviruses usually declines with increasing of age. And it is most commonly seen in during the summer season, and cases may occur at reduced frequency throughout the year. So acute viral meningitis due to enteroviruses. So patients usually present with sudden onset of fever, headache, local rigidity, and along with other constitutional signs like vomiting, diarrhea, cough, pharyngitis, and myalgias may be present. So if you examine the patient, there will be some clues towards our diagnosis. usually they will have recent respiratory or gastrointestinal symptoms and recent immunizations and clinical evidence of intraviral meningitis is they have some lesions, exanthematous lesions all over the body. And if you examine the oral cavity, they will have some grayish vesicular lesions. They are known as oral herpangina, are more commonly seen in patients with intraviral meningitis, viral meningitis. And suppose if the patients have family outbreaks, there is a number of patients are affected in the same family, that you should suspect meningitis due to enteroviruses. And suppose if there is an history of insect bites, then you should suspect arboviruses. Or if there is any history of contact with animals, then you should suspect some rabies. So, in case of viral meningitis due to enteroviruses, if you see the CSF examination, usually they have a characteristic lymphocytic pleocytosis around 100 to 1000 cells per microliter, and the glucose levels will be normal in case of viral meningitis. And coming to protein levels, usually levels will be normal or mildly elevated. Suppose if the glucose levels are low, lymphocytic pleocytosis with low glucose, then you should suspect differential diagnosis is main differential diagnosis tuberculous meningitis or fungal meningitis, and some other non-infectious disorders like carcinomatous meningitis or sarcoid meningitis and chemical meningitis. So lymphocytic pleocytosis with normal glucose is the main, with normal or mildly elevated protein levels are the characteristic features of CSF examination. Along with lymphocytic pleocytosis with normal low glucose levels, then you should suspect tuberculous meningitis or fungal meningitis. Coming to diagnosis of viral meningitis with enterococcus bacteria, enteroviruses. So CSF reverse transcriptase PCR is the diagnostic procedure of choice, and this test usually have highest sensitivity if it is performed within 48 hours of symptom onset. And sensitivity of these RT-PCR usually decreases after 5 days of symptoms. And coming to another important mode of diagnosis is culture of the virus. So the sensitivity of CSF cultures for the viruses diagnosis of viral meningitis and encephalitis is very poor. Most of the times you will get negative culture. That's why it is called aseptic meningitis. And coming to treatment of viral meningitis due to enterovirus, it is usually supportive and patients usually recover without sequelae. And sometimes patients may develop chronic and severe infections, especially in individuals with hypogammaglobulinemia or agammaglobulinemia. So coming to another most common cause for viral meningitis is arboviruses. So it should be considered when clusters of meningitis and encephalitis occur in a restricted geographic region during the summer. Then you should suspect the arbovirus infection. And there are other causes for arboviral meningitis like West Nile virus, St. Louis encephalitis virus, and the California encephalitis group of virus. So with these arboviruses meningitis, if CSF examination, usually they will give characteristic features of CSF findings like CSF lymphocytic pleocytosis, normal glucose concentration with normal or mildly elevated protein levels. It is usually similar to the enteroviruses meningitis. Coming to diagnosis of arboviral meningoencephalitis, so usually it is based on demonstration of viral specific IgM in CSF. Sometimes CSF PCR tests are also available for in some areas. Next most common cause for viral meningitis is herpes simplex virus 2. So this is the most common cause for viral meningitis in adults after enteroviruses, and around 25 to 35% of women and 10 to 15% of men may develop meningitis after a primary episode of HSV infection, usually genital herpes. So among these 25 to 35% of women and 10 to 15% of men, 20% of people may develop recurrent attacks of meningitis. So, the most common cause for recurrent meningitis, recurrent viral meningitis, that may be due to herpes simplex virus 2. Coming to diagnosis of viral meningitis due to herpes simplex virus, usually CSF PCR is the more gold standard investigations, and via cultures usually negative, and specific antibodies to herpes simplex virus may be useful in the diagnosis of viral meningitis with herpes simplex virus, but antibody tests usually less sensitive and less specific than PCR. And there are certain clues in the clinical examination that suggest about herpes simplex virus meningitis. So that is, if you examine the genital area, usually they will have genital lesions or the penile or vulval regions. So that is the most important clue for meningitis due to herpes simplex virus. But in most cases, there will be no evidence of active genital lesions. And as I told in the previous, most cases, the most common cause for recurrent viral meningitis is due to herpes simplex virus. So another cause of viral meningitis is varicella zoster virus. So it should be suspected in the presence of concurrent chickenpox or shingles lesions. So if the patient have history of fever, headache, and meningeal signs, along with or past history of chickenpox, then you should suspect meningitis due to varicella zoster virus. And in up to 40% of cases, rash may be absent, and the frequency is extremely variable, and ranging from 3% to 20% of the patients may develop varicella zoster virus meningitis after the acute infection. And diagnosis is usually based on CSF PCR, but it has low sensitivity. Another cause for viral meningitis is Epstein-Barr virus, and many viral meningitis due to Epstein-Barr virus usually diagnosed by simple CSF examination, usually that shows atypical lymphocytes in the CSF examination or peripheral blood, usually suggestive of Epstein-Barr virus infection. And culture of Epstein viruses is very difficult, and usually diagnosed by CSF PCR test. And one more important cause for viral meningitis is HIV. So HIV meningitis, it should be suspected in any patient with viral meningitis with high risk factors for HIV infection. So meningitis may occur following the primary infection with HIV in 5 to 10% of cases, and in later stages, it is very less commonly causes the viral meningitis. And usually patients with HIV meningitis, they will have other features like cranial nerve pulses like 5th, 7th, and 8th cranial nerve pulses. And diagnosis is simple by detection of HIV in blood and CSF. And rarely, mumps may also lead to the viral meningitis. And, but the incidence of mumps meningitis is decreasing worldwide because of vaccination. And the clues for meningitis due to mumps is parotitis. If the patient have parotitis, arthritis, ophoritis, usually that's suggestive of mumps meningitis. And coming to clinical presentation of viral meningitis, usually patient presents with fever, high grade of fever, severe headache, and meningeal irritation. Sometimes patients may have mild irritation, or sometimes patients may be absence of meningeal signs. So fever usually around 38 to 40 degrees centigrade. And coming to important clue for viral meningitis, severe headache. That is usually frontal or retroorbital headache and associated with the photophobia. And usually they will have pain on moving the eyes, and lethargy and drowsiness is very mild. And sometimes if you examine the meningeal signs, usually mild, there will be mild meningeal signs, or sometimes meningeal signs may be absent in case of viral meningitis. And systemic symptoms and signs are very infrequent, like myalgias, anorexia, nausea, and vomiting, and abdominal pain. So coming to clinical presentation of viral encephalitis, here the consciousness will be altered, patients may present with confusion or behavioral changes. Sometimes patients may develop with severe coma state, and along with altered consciousness, usually they will have other manifestations of cerebral hemisphere involvement like hallucinations, uh, severe agitation, personality change. Sometimes patients may present with psychotic state, or patients may present with focal or generalized seizures. And in viral encephalitis, the signs and symptoms usually depends upon the involvement of the site of brain parenchyma. So the patients may present with aphasia, ataxia, or upper motor or lower motor neuron weakness, or sometimes patients may present with involuntary movements because of involvement of extrapyramidal tract lesion, extrapyramidal involvement, and involvement of cranial nerves may produce cranial nerve deficits. And so unusual presentation of viral meningitis is, so usually they will have severe loss of consciousness is one of the important unusual presentation. And seizures and focal neurological deficits also uh, unusual presentations. So patients who present with the fever, with severe headache, along with severe loss of consciousness, seizures or focal neurological deficit, then you should suspect encephalitis rather than viral meningitis, or sometimes you should also suspect bacterial meningitis also. So with viral encephalitis, any type of neurological disturbance is possible. Coming to differential diagnosis of meningitis, viral meningitis and viral encephalitis are partially treated acute bacterial meningitis and partially treated tuberculous meningitis or fungal meningitis. These are the three different differential diagnoses for acute viral meningitis or encephalitis. Acute bacterial meningitis is easy to diagnose. If you examine the CSF, usually they will have plenty of neutrophils with low glucose and high protein levels with severe clinical manifestations. And tuberculosis meningitis is usually diagnosed by characteristic CSF examination with history suggestive of any contact or tuberculosis patients. And fungal meningitis is most commonly seen in patients with immunodeficient people. Coming to treatment of acute viral meningitis, so first you should stabilize the patient by reducing the temperature with analgesics or antibiotics. And if the patient has severe vomitings, you should give antiemetic, and you should monitor the fluid and electrolyte status. And suppose if you have any suspicion of acute bacterial meningitis, then you should start with appropriate empirical antibiotic therapy along with antivirals up to culture reports occurs. So there are certain indications for hospitalization. Suppose if the consciousness is very severe, and if the patient has seizures, recurrent seizures, or if the patient has focal neurological deficit, then you have to admit the patient in intensive care unit and monitor the vitals carefully. And the symptoms, if there are any symptoms suggestive of brain parenchyma like raised ICT or seizures, they are also one of the indication for hospitalization. And patients with meningitis with atypical CSF profile also should admit the patient. After stabilization of the patient, if you have strong suspicion of acute viral meningitis or encephalitis, then you have to give antiviral drugs. The most commonly used antiviral drug is acyclovir. Intravenously, you should give. The dosage is 30 milligram per kg body weight per day in 3 divided doses. So the acyclovir should be given for a period of 7 to 14 days, and usually after 14 days we have to continue a oral antiviral drug like acyclovir oral or famciclovir, valacyclovir. And sometimes if the patient have mild illness, you can start with oral antiviral drugs also. Suppose if the viral cause for viral meningitis is HIV, then you should start with highly active ART drugs. So then After stabilization of the patient, you have to take some precautions to prevent the viral meningitis, mainly by vaccination. So vaccination is one of the important step to prevent the viral meningitis. By an effective method of preventing the development of meningitis, usually vaccination is available for mumps, measles, and poliovirus. And varicella zoster virus also has one a live attenuated vaccine. So coming to prognosis of acute viral meningitis. So prognosis is excellent with the full recovery from viral meningitis. This is the main differentiating between acute bacterial meningitis, which is severe if it is not treated, and sometimes if you treat well also in time, that may result in some residual neurological signs. But in case of viral meningitis, prognosis is excellent with full recovery from viral meningitis. But sometimes some patients may develop neurological signs like they may have persistent headache, or mild mental impairment, or incoordination, may be present for weeks to months. But recovery is complete, excellent prognosis with full recovery if you start appropriate antiviral therapy in the right time. Coming to viral encephalitis, most of the times the viral, as I told in the previous slide, the separation is not possible with acute viral meningitis from acute viral encephalitis. So you should be diagnosed on clinical features, clinical manifestations, along with some physical examination findings. So it is difficult to differentiate from one viral encephalitis from others on clinical grounds only. So coming to diagnosis of viral encephalitis, usually patients will have fever with severe headache with predominant brain parenchymal involvement, feature suggestive of brain parenchymal involvement like seizures or vomitings, focal neurological deficits. So patients, those who are presenting with the high grade of fever with headache with seizures or focal neural deficit, then you should examine the CSF analysis. Usually it shows lymphocytic pleocytosis with normal glucose levels, with mildly elevated protein levels. And in more than 95% of cases of viral encephalitis, there will be more than 5 cells in CSF examination. And rarely the cells may be more than 500 cells in 10% of cases. If the CSF examination is showing atypical lymphocytes, then you should suspect Epstein-Barr virus infection. And if the CSF is showing persistent neutrophilia, there is an important clue for acute bacterial meningitis. So CSF PCR is the primary diagnostic for any CNS infections. So CSF cultures are often disappointing, and most of the times in 95% of cases, usually it will be negative. And in case of viral encephalitis, there is a role for MRI or CT brain. Usually it helps to identify or exclude the alternative diagnosis, and it also helps to identify focal or diffuse cerebral lesions. So the most common MRI abnormalities in case of viral encephalitis due to herpes simplex viruses, it often involves the deep brain structures like thalamus, basal ganglia, and brainstem, rather than the cortex. So nearly 80% of patients will have abnormalities in the temporal lobe, and only in 10% of cases there will be extra temporal regions involvement. And EEG, if you EEG is electroencephalogram, occurs more than 75% of patients with PCR documented HSV encephalitis, but the features of EEG suggestive of HSV encephalitis are usually non-specific. So this slide is showing MRI brain. There is a increased signal in the right temporal lobe confined predominantly to the gray matter. Important clue for HSV viral encephalitis. Coming to management of viral encephalitis, same as viral meningitis, but monitoring the vitals like respiratory rate and the blood pressure. And suppose if the patient have increased ICT, then you have to control the reduce the increased renal pressure by giving the anti-mannitol or corticosteroids and the antipyretics to reduce the fever. And if the patient have seizures, then you should give antiepileptics like phenytoin. And you should also take some steps to prevent the aspiration, bed sores, and DVT. And coming to specific therapy, specific antiviral drugs like viral meningitis. So acyclovir is the drug of choice, usually in a dose of 30 mg per kg body weight, up to 14 to 21 days. And acyclovir should be given in a diluted form, 100 ml of normal saline, and it should be slowly given intravenously over a period of 1 hour, mainly to minimize the risk of renal dysfunction. And suppose if the patient have any reduced renal glandular function, you have to adjust the dose. And after intravenous therapy of 2 to 3 weeks, then we have to continue the oral valacyclovir around 2 grams PAD for 3 months should be followed. So that is treatment of viral encephalitis. So viral meningitis and encephalitis are both are usual patients with meningitis, viral meningitis. They have predominant meningeal signs. In case of viral encephalitis, they have predominant features of brain parenchyma involvement. So diagnosis is mainly by PCR method and CSF examination, and management is by after stabilization of the fever by taking by giving some antipyretics. And suppose if the patient have seizures, then you have to give anti-epileptic drugs. And specific therapy is acyclovir, antiviral drugs. Acyclovir should be given 30 mg per kg body weight in 3 divided doses for a period of 14 to 21 days. And then you have to give oral antiviral drug like valacyclovir. So that is the management of meningitis and encephalitis. So the main difference between acute bacterial meningitis and viral meningitis is acute bacterial meningitis is a very severe form of meningitis. Usually, if you don't treat in early period, they may result in death, or sometimes they may lead to residual neurological lesions. Patients may present the residual neurological symptoms. In case of viral meningitis is usually excellent recovery is possible if you start early. And viral encephalitis, in case of viral encephalitis, most of the times patients may develop some residual neurological manifestations if they don't treat early. So that is about viral meningitis and viral encephalitis. In the next class, we will discuss about nervous system involvement in sarcoidosis and treponema pallidum. So in the next class, we will discuss about CNS involvement in sarcoidosis and syphilis. Thank you.